Welcome everyone to SEO Office Hours. My name is Michael Chidzey. I'm an SEO here at Good Signals. And part of what we do, along with special guests, are these office hour sessions where people can jump in and ask their questions around their website and web search. By the way, nobody here is in the hot seat and we might not know all the answers, but multiple heads thinking about a problem should help. We have a bunch of questions submitted already, as you can see. But if there's anybody here on the live call that would like to submit any questions, feel free to flag yourself in the chat functionality, which will be monitored. Also, there's usually a bunch of other SEOs on the call. Please feel free to share your perspectives. I think that's one of the best things about SEO Office Hours is it's not just the 4 people speaking here, but it's everybody else contributing and helping with each problem. Like every week, with me today is Juliana Turnbull, also known as SEO Joe Blogs. Morning, Joe.
Hello, good morning. Hello, everyone. We have a very full SEO office hours. We have 2 great special guests here today, and it is our 33rd SEO office hours, which is great, more than halfway. So yeah, as Mike said, I'm Juliana Turnbull. I run a digital remote consultancy business called Turn Global, and we help clients with their marketing and those who want to expand their audience into different markets to go global. We work with fintech, finance, and SaaS brands. And also, I run 2 search events, Search London and Search Barcelona. And actually, we have our next in-person event in Barcelona in August, actually, a dinner. Thank you, David, for the suggestion. And David's on the call with us today. So today we have 2 great special guests, Ryan and Louise. Ryan is the marketing manager at SEO Testing, which has exploded over the last year or so. Ryan's been brought on board to help the founding team expand the business in many directions. He's also the author of the Marketing Kickoff newsletter, and he's a regular speaker at events like Brighton SEO and the Nottingham Digital Summit. He's also a guest as well on other podcasts like The Search with Candor and Unscripted. And outside of that, he does a lot of football, and he's actually running a half marathon in September. Now, he's using ChatGPT as his exclusive running coach, and he's going to see how that works for him. He's wrote about it in his newsletter, and I'll share the newsletter with you and his LinkedIn profile. So hi, Ryan. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, no problem at all. Happy to be here.
Impressed with the training for the half marathon and your test about the ChatGPT.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Sorry, just to ask, is ChatGPT the running coach? Is it as mean as some PTs and stuff are, or is it quite nice to you?
It depends on how I ask it to be.
Okay, cool.
And hello, Louise. Thank you for joining us today. Louise is the SEO manager at RAC. She's been working in the SEO industry for just over 4 years. She actually gave a very insightful and excellent talk at Blue Array's Excel conference in London around SEO and social media and how the 2 channels work together. Some interesting facts about Louise. She graduated with a BA honors in script writing for film and TV, and she actually runs a very successful Instagram page for vegan food around Bristol. I will share that. Loads of great tips. I wish I lived in Bristol. And she's very active on social media. She also loves the process of growing social media accounts. Ping her if you want some advice about that. And actually, she also worked as a logger and production runner on some great shows like Britain's Got Talent, X Factor, Made in Chelsea, and a few more. I'll share her Instagram and connect with Louise on her LinkedIn profile here as well. Welcome, Louise. Very interesting background. You're doing so much as well outside of work.
Very busy.
David's asking vegan food where? Oh, it's in Bristol. Let me just share that. Very good. That's the Instagram one. And everyone joining us, we have quite a few people dialing in from India, Spain, and Pakistan today. We've got a few from the UK. Anyone that's joining us and has just joined us right in the chat, we're calling in from today. We've got another international SEO office hours. I'll pass you back to Michael because we got loads of questions again today, which is great.
Yes, we have, but feel free to share your questions if you have any. You'll notice my background's different. I'm calling from Cheddar in Somerset today with my folks visiting. Okay, so first question. This one's for you, Joe, which is somebody submitted this question through the page that sort of tells you how to do the answers to this question. So that means I probably need to approve the page. The question is, how can attendees get more involved in contributing questions or topics for upcoming SEO office hour events? You might have frozen, Joe. I think you have. Okay, I'll answer the question. On our website, we have a page. If you go to goodsignals.com/SEO office hours, there is a page there where you can submit any questions. But if you have any in your life on the call, feel free to submit your questions as well. Is it just me that Joe's frozen for, or is that for everybody? Oh, you're back. Here we go.
It was my internet connection. Sorry, we had a storm, so it's a bit temperamental. So if anyone would like to take part in SEO office hours and submit some questions and join us live, please sign up on goodsignals.com/SEO-office-hours. So anyone can join us live and be a special guest. Just fill in the form and we will be in touch with you.
Great. Super. Okay, next question. Is it possible to run a screaming frog crawl for a website that's not accessible in my country? I've tried various configurations, but it's not working. Any tips or tricks would be greatly appreciated. Simon's already hit it on the mark there.
Simon's nicked my answer. But yeah, I think a VPN is probably the way to go. I suppose another option is, I know within Screaming Frog, I'm not sure about the other tools like Sitebulb and all the other crawling tools, but you can configure your own proxy as well in Screaming Frog. So if you acquire a proxy that's in the country where that website is accessible from, and then you can set Screaming Frog to do it that way. But I think a VPN is probably cheaper and easier.
Great, that's what I was going to suggest too. And Louise, when we do SEO office hours, we do like a prep call the day before. We just run through some of the submitted questions. We don't answer any, but we just run through them. And Louise suggested just contacting Screaming Frog, which I did on their behalf, and they've said the same things. They've said if it's truly not accessible in your country, i.e. blocked via IP, then use a VPN and you'll be able to crawl it. Something like ExpressVPN is super cheap, and it's one click to switch region on your local machine, as Screaming Frog crawls locally from your actual machine. But they find with lots of websites where it's just a redirect based on IP, you can usually get around that using the forms-based authorization without a need for a VPN. And they've shared a link, which I'll put in the chat, and it will be in the YouTube description. So that there is a possibility of using that functionality. I've just shared it there. Great. Anybody else want to add anything on that?
No, I think that's all.
Perfect. Okay, this one, we actually had this question last week, but I knew Ryan was coming on the call this week, so I decided to hold back, and you'll get why as I read it. How does A/B testing influence SEO? Additionally, what are the key differences between SEO and A/B testing? And then we have a second question, which is just around, if you haven't done it before, how do you actually set up an SEO A/B testing program? Ryan, are you happy to kick off with this one? If you say no,
yeah, it'd be a bit embarrassing if I said no, so I can answer that. To answer the second question first, what are the key differences between SEO testing and A/B testing is, when we think about SEO testing, we've probably been doing that since we started doing SEO, in the fact that we make a change and then we'll monitor something to see what happens, whether it's like some keywords that you're tracking or just site traffic in general. SEO testing is probably like the more refined way of doing that, where you can make a change and then use a certain tool. It can be Google Search Console, it could be SEO testing, it could be Search Pilot, it could be any of them, to then see what happens to that particular page. So a good example is like a content update that you do, where you'll update your content and then just see what happens with regards to clicks, impressions, keywords, that kind of thing. A/B testing in itself is a weird one when it comes to SEO, because the traditional sort of view of A/B testing is taking two versions of the same thing and then testing it to see what happens. So Google Optimize was a tool for that a little while ago. You can change certain things on one page and it will send some users to one version of the page and some users to another version. But the way we do it, which gets around any kind of crawling, indexing, ranking, that kind of thing, is we do it with like groups. So a good example is e-commerce websites. So if you wanted to make a change on a category page, for instance, you'll take a group of category pages where you're not going to make the change, which is your sort of control group, and then take a group of pages where you're going to make the change, that's your test group. And then we'll just run the test and see what happens with regards to that test group of URLs, whether it goes up, down, what happens to, again, clicks, impressions, and that kind of thing.
Great, amazing. I love that you guys have made SEO testing like really accessible, because it's something like I've always done A/B testing. And when people come to us and they do it, or you hear about it, obviously it's very easy to increase conversions on your website if you get rid of everything, for example, on the page, and just have a big buy now button, for example. But the problem is with that is it impacts SEO, and those A/B testing tools don't take that into account. You might have an increase in conversion rate, but obviously if you've got less visitors to that page, it's not really showing you whether you're making more money or trying to achieve your objectives. So it's great that you can use kind of those tools hand in hand, which is awesome. Would anybody else like to add anything to this? So we've got, how does it differ? And how do you set up a program? And how does it influence SEO?
I
Was
just
that
have a
me?
question.
I'll go for it, Joe.
No, well, I should just have a question really for Ryan just about this, because I think, yeah, it's great to make this all accessible, but I think a lot of people maybe are struggling also with resource. So wanted to find out from yourselves, how much time should you actually give for SEO testing to really see that difference?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. I've been trying to avoid using maybe an it depends answer, but maybe in this case is right. But I can give some instances. So in terms of like actually dedicating the time to SEO testing, if you're doing it like in a similar way we do it, it's not necessarily going to take a whole lot of time. So for us, one of the big ways in we do it is we want to find what works and then double down on it. So a big one for us and our blog in particular recently is we found that adding embedded videos into our blog posts is a good way to increase impressions, clicks, click-through rates, that kind of thing. So Tiago, who works with our marketing team, creates a video for kind of every big blog post that we publish, which we then embed. And then just for that, we embed the video and then we monitor a test for 8 weeks and then just see what happens. So yeah, the initial time to get set up is dependent on what you're doing. Are you doing large scale content updates? Are you doing small changes to category pages on blogs? And then you want to monitor the test for a good amount of time just to eliminate any sort of like algorithm based factors, given that obviously Google changes its algorithms thousands of times. So yeah, you want to monitor it for a good amount of time. We recommend 8 weeks if you can, but yeah, anywhere from 2 weeks to 8 weeks, depending on how much traffic your site gets.
Okay, yeah, that's a good amount, because I think sometimes people are under time pressure, so really need to have that at least 2 week time frame. Okay, thank you. I don't think we've got we've got no more questions in the chat about this one in particular. So that was a lot of insight. Thank you.
If I can ask one question around it, if that's all right, which is just around, so if you're running an SEO test and a core update happens right in the middle, do you stop and start again once it's over? Do you keep it going? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, stop and start again, because the reality is then if a core update's happening with any time thing, it's just so difficult to tell whether it's the change that you've made or whether it's just the algorithm update. So yeah, in that instance, and I suppose a good example for us to share, it's not core update related, but it's regarding the issues that Google Search Console have recently had with the delay in bringing new data, which has affected a lot of people. We actually had an article about what happens like when Google Search Console doesn't update, which was ranking just under Google's own article. So naturally logging onto the site one morning and seeing the traffic spike, that's not necessarily it. And then we're seeing all these emails from like SEO testing saying, oh, you've hit a new daily traffic record and a new like we can't take anything into account because that's purely coincidental based on what's happened to Google. But yeah, to go back to the original point, try and make the update, try and make your tests when there's no updates happening. Obviously, if one then gets announced whilst you're in the middle of a test, probably best to just wait for the core update to finish completely and then restart the test.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next question. And Louise, I thought about you when we had this question, which I saw Louise speak a few weeks ago at Blue Array have a conference called Excel in Shoreditch, which was really good. And your talk was amazing. And the examples that you gave were actually outside of your role and sort of things that you do on the side. And so this question is, how do you prioritize tasks when dealing with limited resources and budget? Now they're referring to SEO, but I was thinking if you manage to find time to do all these other things, how do you do it?
It's a really good question. I can answer it for SEO and outside of SEO, to be fair, because I've worked in smaller SEO teams before. And I think that a few things, if you've got a smaller team and obviously resource is only as much as you have. So you do have to prioritize things and let things fall while you prioritize others. I think the first thing to look at is, what do you think is going to move the needle the most? There's no point in focusing on the task that's come in most recently if you think it's not going to make as much impact as maybe another task that's on your list to do. So it's looking at what is going to make the biggest impact, but also looking at quick wins. Is there something that maybe would only take you half an hour to an hour that could maybe not benefit you as much as a task that would take a day, but it's something you can do quickly? So I think it's around the benefit and how long it takes you as well in terms of like SEO, especially if you've got a smaller SEO team. I think that could be quite important. Outside of work, having time to do lots of things, my biggest advice is just get up really early. That's my holy grail. Get up a couple of hours early and see how much you can fit in before you've got to start your normal day. That's how I do it, at least, and it seems to be okay.
So
Yep.
I was really hoping you were going to give me something, a secret kind of thing.
No,
Just work
no,
harder.
there's no secret that I know of, at least. It's literally just getting up early, and I think being organized with the time. Like, if you can do things like for social media, for example, I know that I like to post every other day, and if I can pre-plan that on a Sunday and say I'll either schedule this or I'll edit videos then, and say I know that I've got these things ready to go for the week. So I think it's a bit of pre-planning as well. It really helps you keep on track.
And I would say, just to add to that, I think also if you can just try not to get distracted. So your planning is a very good tip, as well as organization. And actually that relates to another question that we just had in the chat, if you don't mind me asking, Mike. So Eugene's asking, what is a needle mover that will bring us from page 2 to page 1, assuming that everything that you needed to do on the actual page, on page SEO, is done? So I'll throw that back to you, Louise, because you were talking about prioritizing what makes the biggest win. So if there's anything, tips that you can give about, in some of your experience, what has moved the needle for some of your clients or brands that you worked with?
Sure. I do think it's quite dependent on the website and where you're at this moment. If you think you're doing everything right on page and you're still not finding you're getting onto page 1 like you'd expect, I think look at the quality of your other pages and maybe your domain altogether. Do you have your 3 really core pages that are fantastic, but then 10 other pages that maybe you don't look at as often that are poorer quality? And is that dragging down the quality of your core pages? And maybe that's why they're not getting onto page 1. I also wonder, technical health would be the next thing I look at. If you think on page all really good, is there something going on in the background that maybe you can't see as obviously on the front end?
Good point. Thank you.
Right.
Ryan, do you have anything to add?
So, Ryan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so I've got just one thing on the priority one, and then I'll just move to just a different point on the needle mover. But one of my big things when it comes to prioritizing different tasks is I like to use the PI framework, which is potential, importance, and ease. So you can just create a spreadsheet dead easy with the list of tasks that you want to do, and then give each one a score from 1 to 10 based on your own experience from the potential, the importance of it. So a good example is if a page is like no indexed, for instance, then that's a really high importance task. So that would be like a 10. And then how easy is it to do? Again, that's probably a 10 because it's just a case of getting rid of that. And then you can just give yourself an aggregate score based on the averages of each. So you can then look at your spreadsheet and you can just list it one by one and say, okay, this is probably the one I should do first. This is the one I should do second, and then just move down in order. So that's one I like to use for different sort of task prioritization. And then in terms of needle movers, Louise has hit the nail on the head. One thing I would maybe add as well is if everything really is on point on page, then I'd look at like backlinks. It might be a case of those pages on page 1 have maybe a few more relevant backlinks or a few more highly authoritative backlinks. And then, because I like to give Rand some public recognition for this kind of stuff, is another key point is we know, especially now based on the algorithm leaks, that Google uses click data in certain ways and maybe in certain points. I don't necessarily like to use the algorithm leak to say they definitely do this and this, but we know they use click data in points, and we've run tests as well. So maybe looking at the actual experience users are having on that particular page. So if they're going onto a page and then immediately clicking off, then that's maybe not the best signal to Google. But if they're go on a page and then click around a few links and then leave, but don't go back to Google, then that's probably a better signal for Google that they're having a good experience and maybe that they're answering the question.
Great. Joe, do you have any thoughts? Like, you're one of the most productive people that I know. So from that perspective, you've surely got some. And then obviously you work with lots of different clients and so on. So in terms of the moving the needle, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, in terms of moving the needle, I think I really do looking and seeing where the site is from a technical perspective. And also I did do a lot of link building in the old tradition and those many years ago. So I like to see where they're getting their links from. I also like to see if they've actually got some stories that they can share that maybe would be very interesting for the users to know, because everyone loves a story. And sometimes when you're really close to the brand, you may not be thinking that it is a story. It could be something around your history, it could be something about the study that you did, it could be anything really. So I would always take a step back, ask people that are not as close to the website as you are, and have a brainstorming session. So what are the ideas that you could think are interesting that people would want to hear about from you? And then that would actually generate a story. You could create a nice piece of content on your website and get people linking back to you, or just even talking about it on social media. In terms of time as well, I get up really early, but it's also about trying not to get distracted. So have a to-do list. But what I realized actually is we keep having these to-do lists, but we don't have a done list. So at the end of the month or at the end of the week, you have a to-do list, right? And then tick off what did you do? And you'd be amazed about what you have done. If you have been distracted on certain things, make those distractions more in the afternoon. Maybe you're more productive in the morning, and just get the tasks that you want done in the morning out. But planning is also key. So I like what you're saying, Louise, about planning your post on a Sunday. It's like prepping your food or your lunch. You do that for the week at the weekend. And we do have one other question actually about some indexing. So we can go to the next question, but I just wanted to answer that as well.
Great. I'll just add with the moving the needle. Something that I often do is try and get away from my industry or outside of the website that I'm working on. And I try and make time each month to just look at the most competitive terms and who's ranking, and try and work out why they might be ranking and what they're doing, and looking at what their page looks like. It's really fascinating. Every time I do it, it's a real pain because it takes days to do. But every time I do it, I'm so pleased that I did do it, because come up with loads of really fascinating ideas around web page layouts and great content or campaign ideas. And I tend to look at everything from the technical side, so what structured data they're using, through to the actual content on the page and what that looks like, to campaigns, so links to those pages. I often, every time I do it for each client that I work on, I come back with sort of 20 different ideas of ways that we can improve their kind of commercial pages or some of the content on the pages. And then when I've got that, it's a case of making sure that over the next month that we can actually make those things happen, and trying to work out kind of smart ways to do it, but also to make time each week. So rather than try and do all of those things at once, just try and make, if it's a small client, carve out a few hours a week, to if it's a major one, trying to still share that time across the month, but having more time to do it. And Joe was saying, like, actually tick it off. But I think getting outside in terms of what moves the needle, that stuff, like looking at the websites that are doing really well rather than your direct competitors, or sticking to your industry. And that's always changing as well. So that for me is worked. And obviously a web page can always evolve and get better. And so not just doing it and then leaving it, thinking about other ways to make it better so that you deserve those to be on page one, or I can't remember what the question said now, but yeah, to be in a better position. So I definitely recommend that.
I have one more thing about the productivity. Sorry, it's just come to my head. And it's something that I do, I'd say every other day. So it's definitely one to mention. I don't know if there's like a special name for it, but I read it online about if you're doing a task but you're easily distracted, set a timer for 25 minutes. And within that 25 minutes, if you get distracted, you think you want to look at your phone, or you remember you need to like check something, save it, and then have a 5-minute break after the 25 minutes. And then in that 5 minutes, you think, oh, I'll check my phone that I want to do. And you just carry it on. And I think it's after 4 25-minute like stints, you then have a half an hour break, 1 hour break. I can't remember. Definitely a more technical term for it. There we go. Yeah, I can see it in the chat. I found that has been the most helpful thing for me to not get distracted.
That's great. And I just wanted to say also, because if we were thinking about when we were at school, depending on the country you lived in, classes could have been from 30 minutes to 45 to an hour, and then you always had a break. So at work, we should also apply that too.
Yeah, my life is in Evernote. So everything that I do each day, each month, each week, and so on, and every note and everything. So if Evernote ever shut down, I'd be in trouble. But that's how I basically keep on top of things. And having an accountability coach as well is really good. So having somebody that if you share your to-do list with, each week you meet up with them. And if you've still got those same things on your list, it becomes embarrassing basically. So it's good to have somebody, whether they're in your team or a friend or something like that, is quite useful. Cool. Ready? Next question.
Yeah, can we ask one from the chat?
Yes, please go for it.
Okay, so thank you, Paul Chan, for sending this through. So we've touched on this briefly earlier. So he said that recently noticed that Google search I think it's taking a long time to get indexed. Before, if we requested through Google Search Console to have the site indexed, it would take a few days. But now it doesn't seem to be indexed, does not seem to consider indexing requests anymore. And he's also noticed that Google's de-indexing URLs after they've been indexing. So he's a bit confused as to what Google the URL indexing concept is through Google Search Console. Is it working that now or not? Ryan, you were saying that you saw some delays. So how much were the delays that you found? And is this something that you think might be resolved soon or the next few months?
Yeah, so what we noticed with the delays in Search Console, it was specifically where we noticed it was a delay in actually bringing the click data through into your dashboard. I actually don't know whether delay impacted indexing as well, but yeah, it was a long delay between us having our Friday data and then getting access to Saturday's data was about 90 hours in the end before we started getting fresh data through. And I remember the big concern about it was that it was right at the end of June. So it was as people were trying to get onto Google Search Console to do client reporting and that kind of thing. But yeah, in terms of whether it impacted indexing of new URLs, I'm not too sure.
Okay, I think maybe we'll need to just investigate that, perhaps a bit of a searching.
Simon's just put in 90 peaceful hours, which I could totally agree with that, because we had an election here in the UK on the Thursday, and I did that thing where I stayed up all night and so on. So actually not having to do all those reports and so on because I could see on social there were all those issues. So it was fantastic. If that could happen again this Sunday for the Euros, that would be really useful.
Also working in-house as well for me as an example, and not having 20 different clients that I have to do end of month reporting to is, yeah, it made my life peaceful as well.
We just had actually a response here actually saying that it was just a reporting thing. It doesn't affect crawling and indexing. I think Google have mentioned that in their news.
Super. Next question. How do I increase domain authority for a new brand quickly, as it's going to be a way too long road otherwise? Who would like to kick off on this one?
I don't mind starting on this one.
Go for it, Louise.
I think it's a really interesting question, and I think the word quickly alongside SEO is quite quite a big statement. I do think SEO is very much a long-term thing, but I think if I wanted to kickstart a new website as soon as possible, I think the first thing I'd look at is, one, the quality of my pages. Are they rich? Do they have the right sort of content on them? Are you going to give them the best chance at performing? And then I'd look at quick wins, like I mentioned before. It depends what type of business you got, but things like backlinks, and is there anywhere that you could get backlinks? Do you have connections with local charities, local businesses? Are you like an e-commerce company that just does like markets in person? Could you see if you could get a backlink like that? Just seeing any easy wins there. And then I'd probably look at blog post content and things like that. Can you build authority with Google by writing rich, relevant content, like positioning you as an expert and giving more weight to your core pages? I think that's where I would start. But obviously blog post content isn't always the quickest thing, so it depends how much you could write a week, but it doesn't have to be like all flagship articles, even like 500 to 700 words. There's no like word count, so even shorter articles can still really help you build that authority, in my opinion.
Great. Ryan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, just I think the only thing I would necessarily add is, again, I think Louise has hit the nail on the head there pretty well. The question was based on domain authority, and I think the best way to improve your domain authority is just to do the basic things well. So like Louise was saying, was making sure you're answering the question that you're writing about, whether it's in 200 words or 2,000. There's no word limit. We've got articles on our blog which range from 150 words and then we're about to publish one that's 6,500, or just because that's what answers the question. And yeah, just making sure you're getting relevant backlinks. I always go back to relevance rather than anything else, making sure that they're relevant in that kind of way. Are they relevant to your actual business? Like that is what I'm trying to get around. So like us, for example, being an SEO based website, we really try and get links from other SEO based websites rather than going after a Forbes link, for instance, and putting all our effort into that. Yeah, but yeah, it's just doing the basic things well, and then eventually you will see domain authority go up. But then I would also just mention, as well as a caveat to that, is that domain rating isn't used by Google in any way. There may be like small correlations there in some niches where the higher the domain authority, the better chance of ranking, but it's not a metric that's actually used by Google.
I was going to also say that.
I think, yeah, I think that what you need to do is and look and see, we mentioned earlier just about the story, like what's different about this brand. If its course is new, then highlight the people behind the brand. They may be experts in their field. This is something that we've discussed earlier that Ryan and Louise mentioned. People have used domain authority just to maybe see how high quality that site was in the past. And there are still some tools that use that. I see here that Eugenie is saying that domain authority, is this from Ahrefs, SEMrush, or Google's domain authority? Yeah, it's not a Google metric, but there are tools that use it so that you can see how long that site's been around. But what I would do actually is focus on, if you're trying to compare yourself to others, look and see what their organic traffic is like, see where they're getting their backlinks from. And you can use that within SEMrush, Ahrefs, and other tools as well. We have a few people commented on the chat on the question as well. Some people are joking, saying, buy links, LOL. Thanks, Preeti. Simon's talking about, nothing of any consequence was done in a day. So meaning you cannot do this really quickly. Waleed's talking about hire him. Of course, if you need help with gaining exposure, please do look to outsource that to other people and they can help you with that. Ikra is talking about high quality content to be able to increase your authority. Make sure that you have high quality content and also get your links from the relevant places as well. Yeah, so loads of comments back there. Yeah, domain authority, not a Google metric, but it is, they do use this within some of the tools. So I think that's where there is some sort of confusion.
Great. Yeah, if I'm honest, I don't tend to look at domain authority, and maybe is like an indicator, but nothing more than that really. My preference is more to look at organic traffic and if it's working and where you're appearing in terms of average position and so on. But in terms of this, it's really hard. I remember, I think it was 10 years ago, we built the Guinness World Records world's largest bra, and we put it on the side of a building along the Thames. And that was for Vanish, and they were sponsoring Wear It Pink Day, sorry. And on the day, what they wanted was basically for anybody in London that saw this massive pink bra on the side of a building, they wanted it where if somebody was to search pink bra London or big bra London or anything like that, they wanted to be number one. Now, 10, 12 years ago, that was a really easy thing to do. We had bought all the different domains. We had perfect match domains for all of these things. We made sure we had the content on there, great photos and all of that stuff. And if I'm honest, on a brand new website, I don't know if I could do that anymore. I think just times are different. Potentially on a website that has some authority in it and is well known, that might be a bit easier. But in that case, I'd probably focus more on trying to get coverage and hope that they're talking about our brand and stuff in that coverage. But yeah, it's difficult. And I agree with Simon. I don't think it is something that can be just done in a day or in a week or in a month. I think if this is a brand and you've got other brands and you've got budget and you really want to properly launch this brand, unfortunately, I think it's going to cost time and money and resources and great design and great PR and storytelling and all of that stuff, as opposed to just buying a load of links to increase your domain authority. I just don't think that is the way to go. Is there any other comments in the chat?
Yeah, there is. John saying about digital PR is harder than ever before. All the tricks of the trade have been revealed at all these wonderful SEO talks and podcasts. Thanks, John.
Shot ourselves in the foot.
No, but it is harder, but it depends on the market. Obviously, the smaller markets, maybe it's a bit easier to gain some traction, but it's not a quick win. But maybe the person that's asked that question is under pressure from their boss, but it's about educating the team, the internal stakeholders about that. It's not something that's going to just happen in a day.
Sorry, I was just going to add, sometimes I think that one thing you could do, so if you're saying a new brand, maybe you have a brand there already. And if you're migrating that brand, that's a bit different, because that's basically easier in terms of you've already got the content, as long as you're not changing it too much. So that could also be a factor that they're thinking about less. But if there's a totally brand new brand, that's tough.
It's quite difficult. I just want to say thanks everyone for joining us today, to the people that are watching us not live. And if you do want to join us live, you can sign up to the SEO office hours. I'll share the link and it's in the transcript. And if everyone here is enjoying it, watch it again and click a like to the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can always be updated and know when the next SEO office hours is. Back to you, Mike. We have quite a few questions left.
So Simon said things have moved on a lot since 2004. Oh, and so have my techniques, for what it's worth. I don't try and rank websites like that.
And someone else is saying subscribing is a ranking factor. Yes, I think maybe that is if you subscribe to the Good Signals YouTube channel. Yes, very important. Thank you, John.
Okay, so I have another question here. This is a question about how to remove a feature image from Google quickly. Lots of people wanting to do things quickly. Okay, so how do I remove a feature image from Google quickly? I'm trying to remove it for my client from their About Us page. They've shared a URL, which, Joe, would you mind sharing in the chat? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
I've tried always, including updating with another feature image, disallowing the current image in robots.txt, but it's still there. Any thoughts?
My first thought is, if you've put it in the robots.txt but no indexed it, it might be stuck in the index, would be my thought. So when you obviously put it in robots.txt, the crawlers are never going to go back and look at it. So it might just be stuck there. So it won't know to drop it out of the index.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. Would deleting help? Just deleting the image altogether?
Yeah, it sounds like they want to keep it for some reason. I assume you would have just swapped it out, but maybe it's still appearing for some reason.
Yeah. Ryan, have you got any thoughts?
Not necessarily for this question, actually. It's not an issue that I've ever had to deal with before.
No.
I suppose another option is to maybe look at the actual HTML for the site itself, just see whether it's still appearing there. Because obviously, if Google's crawling your site and they're still finding that image somewhere, then yeah, that might be a factor.
Actually, Simon said change the source image URL, and John's saying if it's really problematic, use the URL removal tool. It seems like that one wouldn't get a lot of image search traffic anyway, because I think this person they have updated the image. It's just still there in the SERPs.
I think if you use it, remove it with the URL image tool, then you can, once it's dropped out of the index and you're sure of it, you can then put it in the robots.txt. So after the 6 months, if it's still on your website, it definitely won't be indexed again if you never want that to show.
Super, amazing. Thank you, everybody. If anyone else has any feedback, feel free to share, and we'll keep saying it. The next question, when selecting a theme, what makes it search engine friendly for a new website? I'm assuming like a WordPress, let's say Spotify theme, Shopify theme, those. Anyone got any thoughts? Yeah. Ryan, go for it.
Yeah, again, it just goes back to basics, but we've dealt with WordPress a few times, and I've done in past jobs work on some Shopify stores as well. So I know a lot of people are generally tempted to go for the one that like looks absolutely like the best, and it's got all these like fancy scrolling banners and everything like that, which are all like absolutely fine and still work. But just making sure that it's still going to be easy for Google, and more importantly than that, the users to get all the information. So making sure that the theme's going to make it viable for you to have a good URL structure, make sure all the content's easy to read and is all fully accessible and it's not hidden in any way, and making sure that it's still easy to develop a good internal link structure throughout your pages, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I would just say on that one.
Great. Louise, do you have any other thoughts on that one?
I think someone's also just put in the chat what I was about to say, just make sure that it's not like super code heavy or really slow to load, or it doesn't have some crazy components that are like taking ages to actually render on the page. Because that would be sometimes if you've got certain themes, they look very jazzy, but they can really slow down your site. So I think it's coming to a compromise there. But outside of that, I think Ryan summed it up really well, just making sure that you have all the SEO basics available, because I think some themes don't think of SEO first, they think of the design, which is definitely a huge part of it. But then obviously it's our job as SEOs to say this also does the thing that I need it to do in the search results.
Thank you. We have some other interaction in the chat as well. You both, I don't know what's happening with my words today, but John was talking, yes, about doing some core web vital checks. So before you actually buy that theme, just to see how it's performing. John's also mentioned that it's important that the theme is basically how all of the on-page SEO is implemented. Make sure it's really easy to work on that. And well, Leeds actually said that we recommended Generate Press with premium plugins, and it was working well. Yeah, it's also very important to not overload your site with loads of plugins. And actually what I would do is before you're choosing a theme, go back to your website brief. What is the aim of the website? What do you want the website to do? Because then you can make sure that you're not adding extra plugins, and you can also make sure that you're choosing the right theme. If it's obviously something more of an e-commerce like Shopify, or more of a content type of website like WordPress, or of course there's other ones like Wix. There's a lot out there. So really make sure that when you choose your theme, refer back to the website briefs so that you make sure that you're choosing the one that's economical, easy to change, and it's not too heavy.
Yeah, on the brief side, whenever I'm doing something like this, I always like to work with the client to put a list together for this website, what's essential, what's nice to have, and like in a perfect world, and get all that stuff down before you start looking at themes, because you can get caught up in those with all the bells and whistles and looks beautiful and all of that, but actually misses some of the key things you need the website to do. So having that sort of checklist first is quite important. We've had similar questions to this in the past, actually, around choosing themes in WordPress and so on. And I'll go back to what I've said before, which is I would go and check out the demo websites of those themes to see if they're any good and what they look like and if they perform and so on. And John was saying about putting it through things like putting the demos through Core Web Vitals and checking sort of on-page elements. And then the other thing is most themes have reviews, or they have forums. And I would just look in there and see if in the forum, for example, there's lots of questions around SEO issues, then that's probably a signal that I wouldn't use that theme. But usually you might see the opposite. So from a review perspective, along with it being easy to use and they're really happy with it, that it performs really well. And often in the forums, people will share their actual websites that are using the themes. And it's quite good to take some real examples and just analyze those as well to just see if they're performing well.
Yeah, we also have from John said, actually, it's quite a good tip. It might help to check your competitor sites just to see how they benchmark, like how high is that bar. And Simon was mentioning he's not a themes fan himself, because often very bloated. There he is. So he says basically get a budget for a good designer, stroke dev, to build them for you. But for most small businesses, that can be out of scope. So obviously there's a lot of off-the-shelf packages that you can get. Oh, Hafsa's actually been asking, does hosting affect the site load speed? And if so, how to overcome it? Yeah, that's actually might be another question. Does anyone have the answer to this one? Hosting affecting the site load speed. But what I found was if you don't have a good hosting provider, if you don't have enough bandwidth, that has affected sites that I've run in the past. But if anyone has any other comments, feel free to add in the chat. Yes, sorry, that was reading Simon's message as well. SEO issues never stopped a client wanting a theme. It's basically how it looks. Preeti, actually, you're coming back on that one. Thank you about the hosting. So you added Cloudflare, and how did it helped a lot with site speed? That's very interesting. And Simon's also mentioning about CDN. Look to use a CDN like Cloudflare. Okay, we answered that question quite quickly. So
super.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try and fit in 2 questions. This one is, one of my websites has the extension of .co.uk with the domain. We want the website to rank in the UK, but this website seems to just rank in India for whatever keyword you put in. What could the reason be behind this? Our research shows that there are higher search volumes in the UK for the terms you want to rank for. Who wants to kick off on this one? Joe, what about you?
Oh, thanks. That's actually very interesting. Yeah, I wonder why that is actually. The site only starts to rank in India, whatever keyword we put in. I guess I would assess your content and see look at your Google Search Console, where are you getting the other impressions? Maybe also check any sort of, I don't know, any sort of redirects. What I found with one client that I worked on is we were not getting ranked in the country that we wanted to be ranking in because Google thought it was a duplicate of the actual website of the US version. So we had the opposite problem. We had to distinguish the content, make sure it was different. So actually, Paul Chad was talking about it might be the issue of the server, perhaps, for this
Yeah,
one.
there's a few different things that I would maybe try and look at. Server would definitely be one of them. If you're really wanting to target UK, then it's probably good to invest in a UK-based server, or at the very least a CDN that has a good presence in the UK. And then I would also look at the language that's actually being used in the copy of the site as well. Are you writing in UK English, that kind of thing? Which obviously Google's going to be able to crawl that and see. If you use an example for SEO testing, is we rank well for some US-based keywords, which are quite good for us, and that's because we write, even though we're a UK-based website, we write in US English on the site. So that's just a little thing that you can do. And then someone in the chat mentioned one of my other points as well was backlinks. Where are they coming from? Are they coming from other .co.uk domains? But yeah, .in domains may be going to affect it as well.
Yeah, I was going to say the backlinks as well. If you're getting a lot of backlinks from one location, that might be impacting where you rank. So if you do find that's the case, look to see if you can acquire more UK-based backlinks, would be my advice.
Maybe it's the same person that was wanting to grow their domain authority really quickly and may have got backlinks for the wrong place. Yeah, I would just be looking at the different signals that that you're providing and trying to work out, does it make sense? I haven't done this for a long time, but I'm pretty sure in Search Console you can actually select as well where your target country is. That I haven't done that for a long time, so it might not exist.
Yeah, I don't think it does, unfortunately, anymore. I did try that one. I don't
Okay.
think it does. But
Yeah.
actually, Simon mentioned something as well. Check that the first line of code is the HTML line equals n hypertext. Yeah, Bing uses the line. Okay, and someone else is saying, Eugene's talking about, yes, the backlinks. Look at those as well.
So it could also be if it's only a very small website and it's new, and although they've mentioned that there's high search volumes in the UK, it could just be really competitive in the UK, and that you've just got to keep improving the site and give it a little bit of time. So it might not necessarily be a bad thing that you're getting traffic from other countries, because it could just be like a blog post or something or whatever that's picking that up. But yeah, I would just go through the site almost and look at the different signals that you're giving off, whether it's through the content, whether it's through some of the technical aspects that people have mentioned, or look at your links. Louise mentioned earlier about doing stuff locally and talking about it to get coverage and so on from local businesses and charities and all of that stuff. I would focus on that. Okay, right. Is there anything in the chat, Joe, before I jump to the very last question?
Just, yeah, it's might be competitive environment, different countries, different competition from John. No, so let's go to the final, ultimate question.
Great. Okay. So this is a regular question, which is just, what are you most excited about from an SEO perspective? Louise, what are you most excited about at the moment?
Oh my God, that's a huge question. Lots of things. I think in my mind when I think about the future of SEO, I think that SEO is becoming much more than just people finding us on our website. I think it's the whole search journey. Like we've seen the rise of things like Reddits and forums and stuff like that. And it's more not just now, how can I get people to my website? It's like, how can I reach people at different touch points to get my brand in their mind? And it's not just about maybe your website search now, it's organic search on forums and different platforms, like even social media as well. Obviously, I'm slightly biased, I love social media, but things like that, I think will become even more prominent in the future. And it will be now about how can we reach customers before they even get on our website, and think of SEO more than just our website, but as like a whole search journey. It's something that really interests me, something that makes me feel quite excited.
Great, Ryan, what about you? What makes you most excited about SEO? Or what are you most excited about, sorry, in terms of SEO?
I'm most excited about the fact that we actually don't know what the future of SEO is. So I'm excited just to keep learning. It's all well and good saying that AI is going to be the next big thing and that kind of thing. And it probably is, but I don't think anyone can make an accurate prediction of what SEO is going to be in 5 to 10 years. Yeah, I'm just excited to keep learning and keep going at it.
Great. I'm the same. I feel like there's so many smart people in our industry, and I love all the stuff that they publish each week, the things that they're doing on their websites. And it's just, yeah, it's just fascinating. Joe, what about you? What are you most excited about in terms of SEO?
I'm really excited about International Search Summit in Barcelona, November the 14th. I'll share a link here. And we have a special code to give you. You just message us and we'll send it over. And also very excited that we have Natalia that is going to be the co-host. I will not be here next week, spending some time with family. So you'll be joined by Mike and Natalia. next week.
Great. Thank you so much to everybody that joined us live watching. Thank you to those that submitted questions. Thank you to our speakers. You were brilliant. And thank you to those watching it afterwards on YouTube. See you next week. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you, Jem, as well.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thanks,
joining us today.
everyone.
Great. Have a lovely weekend. Bye.